Hello again. We had great feedback from the first interview with Paddy Phillips, all of it positive. I've had more responses to that than to any other video I've done, so it's very gratifying. And of course we welcome questions and comments. The email link is in the footnotes, and feel free to get in touch. We love to hear from you. So today I'm interviewing Paddy about his work in treating injuries. Now, he's well known for treating sports injuries, but he treats and has treated all sorts of traumatic and chronic conditions in all sorts of people, not just in people who work in a sporting context. And just by way of illustration, I had a friend, John, who injured his shoulder, his left shoulder, and it was pretty much immobile. I put him in touch with Paddy and we went up there. John was driving, but he couldn't change gear in the car because the pain in his shoulder was so severe. I had to change gear for him. So we go into Paddy's treatment room. I had to help him off with his shirt, and Paddy starts working on him. We're chatting away, having a good talk, jokes, general chat about everything, putting the world to right. And Paddy said, yep, that's it. John gets up, still talking, and without thinking about it, puts his shirt on. And it's only then he realizes the pain's gone and he's being cured. And he was absolutely amazed. Now, I'd had a similar experience when Paddy treated my right shoulder, which had suffered chronic pain for a couple of years before I saw him. And in one session, he got rid of the pain. So I wasn't as surprised. And for Paddy, it was just another day at the office. He was used to having people enter with limiting injuries and pain, and leave a new person. So in this interview, I want to ask Paddy and talk to him about how he got into this profession. So enjoy. So here we are.
Cheers again.
Yeah, session 2, and the obligatory bulletproof coffee. And we're going to talk about Paddy's career in treating injuries. But there was a chap on the scene many years ago in the late 60s and the 70s called Tony Powell, who I first met down in the Crystal Palace at one of the karate events, and he was treating a lot of the guys and loosening off everyone's backs and stuff like that. And anyway, he had a clinic in Southport, and I eventually needed some treatment. I went up there and he did acupuncture on me, which was highly successful. And he was heavily into Chinese medicine. He researched the old methods, because the Chinese used electric eels, didn't they, to stimulate acupuncture.
They were way ahead of the curve, yeah. They just, in so many ways. Yeah.
Well, one of the stories that was pretty amazing, Terry used to go up there for treatment, and Terry had a cat that got run over and its pelvis crushed, and it was virtually, the vet said it's a write-off, you know. So he took it up to Tony. Tony did acupuncture on it and got its bladder working again and got it able to be mobile, and the cat survived. So you know, acupuncture to me was always pretty impressive. So he was like a character on the scene, and you know, treated a lot of the guys in the martial arts and so on. So Paddy, coming from a martial arts background himself, how he got into this kind of thing is an interesting story.
It was, and I'd heard about Tony Powell, because we're only, 30, 40 miles away from Southport. So, and I'd heard all the stories about him. Now, the way I got into it, initially, I got interested in it. It was necessity being the mother of invention, because a combination of karate from the age of 14 and then joining the fire brigade at 20. So a fair bit of wear and tear sort of went on, and picking up injuries and doing various things, I started to be in need of it myself, but I literally did not have a clue. And I did things like tore the cartilages in my legs, because the way we used to train, I was doing loads of bunny hops and duck walks and all lots of high velocity stuff and things like this. So, and the way I was only in my early 20s then, and that involved running up and down ladders as well in the job. And so I tore the cartilage in both legs and had to have them both replaced. Taken out. But the way in which they did it then was to open the knee right up and scrape it all out. There was no
Keyhole
no
stuff.
scopes and keyhole stuff then, like, you know. Which then, I don't know if this is relevant to the way you want the story to go, but many years later, because they'd basically scraped so much cartilage out, left it bone on bone, I ended up having both knees full replacement.
Yeah.
Now that'll sort of fit in, because about with prehab and rehab, because a lot of people who've had knees replaced never fully get, you know, back to, they want you to get to where you can function. In other words, if you can have a certain degree of bend and walk up and down stairs and get on with your life, that functions, right? If you're training, you want to get to function right, but then you want to go further into fitness, right? And that's kind of one of the theories that was postulated one time, was that there's actually no such thing as a sports injury. An injury is an injury, is an injury. It just happens that you did it doing a sport. You could fall off a ladder, or you could be dumped on your shoulder in a judo throw, or, you know. And that kind of makes some sense to me, but where it all changed was your rehab and your comeback. Because if you've been dumped on your shoulder falling off a ladder, you're not gagging to go and do it again. Yeah. Someone who's been dumped on their shoulder in the dojo, the main question they'd ask is, when can I go back and do it again? So, you know, what happens is you'll get to the position where you can kind of function and it'll work. But then you've got to take it to the point where you can get back training, you know. And that tends to be the difference. The only times there's an exception, if, say, for example, what would bring people in to see me, it was always pain. And dysfunction, but it would be self-employed, because if you don't work, you don't eat. So people who sort of had to get back to work couldn't go, well,
it's the motivation.
You've got 3 months off, you know, on full pay. Or people who are trainers wants to get back into the dojo. And that was the difference. It's how do you take them past just function to fitness. Now, I always used to use the metaphor of car tyres, right? Because if you've got, again, we'll use the idea of a shoulder or a leg injury. If that's the tracking on your tyres and you get it to where it functions, but it's not right, you know, the tracking's out on the tyre. And then you get into the gym and then you start working faster, stronger, but the dysfunction is still there.
Mm-hmm.
What will happen is eventually you'll just wear that tire out and you'll plateau, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'll get so far then you'll plateau. So you're going to go backwards and sort out the dysfunction so that if it functions right, you can then build fitness,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's pretty much what it was. We didn't want it just to be able to walk up and downstairs. We wanted it to be able to like kick, punch, stand back, and things like that. So I think the original question was, how did I get into it? It was out of necessity. I was just picking up injuries, same as same as so many people would. In regards to how much you can recover, both of my knees eventually, I'll stand up a little bit, both of my knees eventually ended up with full replacements, right? Cartilages out, full knee replacements, and I continued to get full range of movement, very, very full range of movement, where both legs were, after a 10-year assessment I had recently in the hospital, they said, your knees function better than people who've never had an op.
Yeah.
That's what can be done. Yeah, that's what can be done.
I know lots of people have had knee replacements and they walk around like Douglas Bader after that forever.
Yeah, so so that's sort of how I got into it, and then inspired by like stories from.
So I think I remember there was a specific occasion when you first had a treatment.
Do you mean with the South African guy?
Yeah, in Switzerland, was it?
No, it was before Switzerland. What had happened was I'd injured my neck. Actually, we injured my neck. You might well look away.
Edit.
Yeah, we injured my neck, but that we were doing the demo, or weapons demo, wasn't it? I was supposed to gracefully go over backwards and go from shoulder to opposite hip and come up in a stance. Anyway, I went over like a sack of shit and jammed my head underneath.
Ruined the demo.
Yeah, ruined the demo. And so I ended up with a bit of a stiff neck. And round about then we had this South African 8th Dan coming over to...
that was Hugh, wasn't it?
Hugh Thompson.
Hugh Thompson, yeah.
So he came over and he and Alana, his girls, they stayed with me a couple of months. And he noticed that by then I was really struggling to sort of turn my neck, you know. So he was asking what's going on, and I was trying to keep it down, sort of. You don't want anyone, the fire brigade or, you know, in the whatever. It was only a stiff neck, you know. But he said, oh, well, let me have a look at this, and got hold of my neck. And then I didn't know what the hell he was going to do. Right round at this, you know, frightened the life out of me. And I could move my neck again. Yeah, absolutely spot on. I was like, the hell's this? And it turned out that some of his students back at home were chiropractors and things like this, the main thing in South Africa. We taught him a few techniques, which he then came over, used on me. And then he had to do it about 4 or 5 times, about 4 times. You know, as I was doing exercises to keep it there, but he had to try and find me first. I was hiding behind the couch by then. But I was kind of really fascinated by it. There's one thing that I would say now. He then taught me how to do this. In fact, he taught us how to do it, didn't he? And the only thing I would say now is I would never ever, I mean, I'm retired, but I would never ever manipulate a neck without doing the questions and safety tests first to ensure the stability of the vertebral artery which passes through the neck to feed the brain. So I'll be asking them questions about dizziness, nausea, nystagmus, where your eyes speckle. I'll be watching them, I check the range of movement. Only when I was 100% safe, pop bit free. We kind of missed that part out. We just grabbed all the necks and yanked them around. But we got away with it, most of the time.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want me to mention about the young girl who slipped in mum's rib.
You can do, yeah.
Now that the cat's out the bag.
Yeah.
One of the young students had seen me just freeing someone's mid-back off, went home and tried it on their mum, which was followed up by a phone call. Sense it bad. Any chance of coming round? And the mum had slipped a rib. And so I nipped back. It'd only been like that for an hour or two, so just pop it back, you know. And the job was a good one. But it's like you said, it's that little knowledge, isn't it? And it's quite bizarre because when people watch someone having their back freed off, they can see what they can see. What they can't see is that, for example, I've got someone's back against my chest. The work doesn't come from yanking. The work comes from putting them in position and then engaging your chest muscle this way. So you don't actually see that. It's jammed. But that's where the action is to accumulate around the dysfunction and, you know, pop it free. So without the benefit of that, this kid slipped in one's rib.
Maybe you could explain the difference between chiropractic and osteo.
Oh, what's the difference between a chiropractor and an osteopath? I usually say about a tenner. Chiropractic had a tendency to be pretty much the belief that everything sort of occurs from the spine, and certainly that has an input, and everybody likes watching. There's some great YouTube videos with chiropractors on.
I keep getting them in my feed.
Some excellent. There's an Australian guy, Ian something or other. He's just excellent. So I love watching these guys. They're very, very skillful. And they, to my understanding, they like linear straight line techniques, you know? Whereas a lot of the osteopathy thing maybe considers some of the soft tissues, or used to. I think chiropractors are good at this as well now. And it was more based on leverage, if you like, rather than boom, blast through it, you know. The truth is, I've done some training with chiropractors, one in particular as well, and I think we've borrowed from each other. So I'll see things that chiropractors do that I was taught in osteopathy, and likewise I'll do certain things that I've seen chiropractors do that I was shown by a chiropractor. So I think they've kind of blended a little bit now, and I also think that chiropractors taking more of the peripheral manipulations as well as just the spinal work, which it seemed to, going back, I mean, I'm going back 41 years when I started to get into this, you know, a long time. So
I think, you know, your approach from my own experience of it is kind of the Bruce Lee thing. Use
what's useful.
What's useful. If it works. If it doesn't work, do something else.
Is right.
Yeah.
You got to have that something else.
Yeah.
You got to have that something else.
Yeah.
So
putting a box around or a label around it sometimes is not useful.
No. And I think we got some of those lessons from martial arts as well. I've seen a lot of associations break down because of politics and money. There's always someone, I want to be this, you know, I'm a political place. I want the dough. I just want to train. You know, it's like, in the same thing applies, you know. Chiropractic's better than osteopathy and things like that. Much like martial arts, I think it depends on the person doing it. You know, depends on the man.
So another treatment, and we've already talked about it in the introduction, was acupuncture, which you've used on me. as I mentioned, the first acupuncture I ever had was with Tony Powell, and to the point you made earlier, that it's not sports injuries, it's just injuries.
Injuries.
I was training, I was going to Vic's gym all the time, I was really training, and I pulled a muscle sitting on the settee, literally turning round, and I pulled a muscle, and after a couple of days it was still painful, and Tony.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing, he didn't only do that.
Yeah.
He did the pulses, the Chinese pulses,
Yeah.
and he sorted out my liver, which I didn't know I had a problem with.
Wow.
So, just for viewers who may be apprehensive about anything involving needles, you don't even know the needles are in. Most of the time when you put them in my back, I hadn't even known they're there.
Well, I'll tell you for why. I jokingly refer to my thumb as a blunt needle. Because if you can find the trigger points, right, trigger points are a great thing to look for in charts. So many times I've found people with pain down here and it's coming from around here.
Yeah.
Find a trigger point, you push into the shoulder blade and it reproduces the pain. Then you've got it, you make your diagnosis, signs, symptoms, tests. Sign is what I see, you carry in your shoulder this. Symptoms, what you feel, I'll feel it there. And then the test is what provokes it and elicits it. So signs, symptoms, tests. We get it. Trigger points are nearly always there. And if you can find an active trigger point and reproduce the pain, then they respond really well to dry needling. Okay, a dry needling is another way of saying acupuncture, except they're not necessarily always on acupuncture points, because there's different charts of different points, and I'll come back to that in a second, because there's a real good thing that just popped into my head. But if I can get into a trigger point in like a rotator cuff thing in the shoulder blade and it reproduces the pain front deltoid, and I'll go, if this comes into your front shoulder, bicep, forearm, thumb, half this finger, then it's going to look like a nerve problem at the back, but it's a trigger point. Right. So I hold the trigger point, right, take it up to about 6 on a pain scale of 0 to 10. And I wait for it to collapse, because your body starts to produce its own painkillers, endorphins. Then, within a very short length of time, I'll push on this, and does that hurt? No, can't feel it. You pop an acupuncture pin in there, they won't even know about it. They won't even know about it, because you've flooded the system with natural painkillers. You've used this thumb inhibition, it's called, if you want to look at it, to inhibit the pain, produce the natural painkillers, pop the pin in, which just works more efficiently than the thumb. But it works, the thumb works, and it can be done at home. Now there are people with needle phobias, and I trained in NLP and various mind things and stuff like that, because a phobia is just
which we will be covering in a subsequent interview.
It is another story. So that's one avenue. If it's a real proper phobia and it's causing a problem, it may not cause a problem, it may just be there, then that's fine. But then I went to go and train in EFT, emotional freedom technique, which is the stimulation of acupressure points and acupuncture points with a tapping sensation to stimulate the nerve. And again, I use that on you.
I know, I'm glad you brought that one up. Just going back to the trigger points, I'll just do my personal view on it. Quite often I've come in and I've had a stiff trapezius, something like that, and Paddy's working on it, but he's not touching here, which you would expect. He's down on the shoulder blade, and then suddenly, finds that trigger point, and that's it. Manipulates it, and then the pain goes. And I was always intrigued by this, the mechanism of it.
You don't go to the pain, go to the cause of the pain, go to the source of the pain.
But the EFT, and there's TFT, isn't there, as well? TFT.
Yeah, they started off with thought field therapy.
Yeah.
Which was hard to train in, very complicated, and not the most accessible sort of way to train. And then a guy, Gary, someone or other, real nice guy, he took it and he picked out the relevant points and he simplified it. And he simplified it just to like 6 or 7 stimulations on a particular meridian, you know, which under the eyebrow, under the eyebrow, under the eye, under the nose, under there, you know, and then into here, and setups and things like this. And it acted like a bit of a catch-all.
Great.
And it worked.
Well, my experience of it, I came back from South Africa with a wrist injury.
Oh, yeah.
I was demonstrating tiger's claw on a pad, and the guy decided to tilt the pad, and I got a big shock on my wrist. And it was for some time anyway. I got to see Paddy, and he said, let's try something, and he got me to lean on the table and give a subjective score on how painful it was from 0 to 10, and it was 8. I remember it was painful 8. And then we did this EFT, and then he said have another go, and it was down to 2, and then we did another round of it, and it went, and it never came back. That's the thing about people think, oh yeah, you know, the treatment may fade and it doesn't work. It does. It's permanent. But the thing was, we were laughing about it, weren't we? Because Paddy was showing me what to do and I was doing it.
And it's nuts.
And we were both, and neither of us believed it. I was thinking, this is silly. This is the silliest thing I've ever done. Yeah. But the pain went. So there's no like placebo effect. It actually worked. It was quite an amazing thing.
Unless the pain was a nocebo effect.
Yeah.
Placebo, I shall heal. Nocebo, I shall harm.
Yeah.
As Latin, and you take that away, and well, guess what?
Yeah, but there was an actual
it was.
reason for the pain.
Because I'd done physical work on it before, which I knew physically everything was sat and moving right, and, you know. But we needed to take it that step further.
There's another treatment that you do with the cups, which is
cupping,
analogous to acupuncture, isn't it?
What I did, I like to take something. If I'm trying to achieve something like, on this occasion, fascial release, fascia being the connective tissue that connects everything and surrounds everything, and whereas a muscle will go from a joint to a joint, and fascia will go from the bottom of your foot, plantar fascia, to the top of your head and back of your tongue in one continuous thing, you know. One of my vids, there's a cadaver that's been stripped of fascia, and when you hold it up, it's like holding up a wetsuit, you know. It's continuous from top to bottom, and when you get a dysfunction somewhere down there, then you it'll reflect itself somewhere further up the body, or can do, you know. And I remember you asking me a question one time on one of the combative courses that I've taught on. They mentioned an Irish guy, and I'm sorry, but I can't remember his name, who was showing a technique of rolling the bottom of your foot.
John Braun.
John Braun,
yeah.
I've never met him, sounds great.
Yeah,
but I've never met him, so and you went, how's that work? Well, that's how it works. The plantar fascia on the bottom of the foot.
Yeah.
If you were to get a tennis ball, and my oldest daughter was asking me, she was giving a talk to a women's institute one time, she said, what can I do as a demonstration? I said, ask if there's someone with tight hamstrings. Get them up on the stage, get them to reach down and see if they can reach to their knees, or, you know, you get an ad hoc measurement of the length of the hamstring. Then get them on a tennis ball, rock back and forwards, rock side to side, take it round in a circle, take it round the other circle, try and grip the ball with the small intrinsic muscles in the foot, you know, and do both sides. Then take another measurement. If they haven't picked up a good 6 inches of hamstring length, I'll be surprised. Yeah. Because when you release the fascia, it then, the fascia is connected to the Achilles tendon, which then becomes the calf muscles that surrounds them, then goes into the hamstrings. So you get an effect of, if I was to, I won't use the expression, say, let's go upstream and see what's causing the problem, because that is a different story with special forces. That's quite, we'll cover that possibly.
Yeah,
sometime
sure.
in the future.
Plan to, yeah.
Now, the question you asked was about cupping. Right. I didn't want to use cupping as such. I wanted to steal the idea of the use of the cups, because pretty much everything you do will push down into tissue. Massage and, you know, sort of getting into it and things like that. You're always pushing tissue down. So my little brain's going, how can I lift tissue up to separate it? And I went, the cups. So I got myself a couple of decent sets of cups, which traditionally they take the air out of the cups by lighting, moxa busting on the neck, popping it on, it draws the air out. Mine was just a simple vacuum thing that lifted the air out, and then the tissue lifted up into the cup, and then I moved it up and down the muscle where I could feel that that's where the restriction was. So, and as we did this, you know, along with other techniques as well, would be a way of releasing the fascia, and it worked. Along with the Chinese system called gua sha, right, which there's a much more modern way of doing it with Graston technique, with like a set of Graston tools, about $1,000. I've got the ones that I need there. You know, I wouldn't buy any extra ones. Surgical grade steel. But a gua sha tool is about 12-15 quid, and it's made of jade. Now, if I can go sideways, I was in Peru, in the jungle, a few years back. I'd gone to do ayahuasca. That's another. It's
Another interview.
While I was there, Jim, the guy who ran the place, was going to see the local equivalent of a physio guy, you know. And I asked her to sit in. I didn't tell anyone I was an osteopath, because when you do that, suddenly everyone's got a bad back.
Yeah.
You know, that's, honestly.
Yeah.
So he went, yeah, come along, sit down. So this guy, Jorge, comes in, which I was really exotic, till I found out it meant George. George. And Georgie. Hello, Georgie. So Jim gets on the deck, Jorge starts working, and what he did was he pulled out a little jar, just lifts off. He just pulled out a little jar.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it. Being in Japan, you got, oh, that's fine. Fill your friend's glass first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so he pulls out, come back, he pulls out a little jar of tiger balm and puts some on, does some work, right? Then uses the lid of the tiger balm, starts doing fascial release in the jungle in Peru like 10 years ago, and I went, oh, this is nuts, isn't it? You know, at some stage it's all, you know, no new stuff.
Yeah.
No new stuff, things like that. So, so you can do it with all of the...
Tiger balm's pretty good too, isn't it?
Yeah. Tiger balm.
I remember in the States, Slacky and I crossed elbows doing the drill. And I was going to my kit bag to get some stuff, and one of the guys went, I've got this tiger balm, rubbed it on, almost immediate.
It's pretty, it's pretty good.
Yeah, so
I'll tell you,
I always have a
one,
supply of it. Yeah.
well, another one that's really, really cheap and accessible was that I was in a shop one time, and there was a little old dear who was asking me to reach up to get something off a shelf, and she said, no, it's my daughter. She said she's got a bit of a sore back. She said, I'm looking for something to, you know, massage your back with. And I said, yeah, try this. I got her a little tub of Vic, Now, Vic's the same thing. It's like a menthol sort of cooling thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't break down. You can use it for massage and things like that. Cheap as chips.
Yeah.
You know, you'll get a tub of that. It'll last you for years. You know, you wiggle around your knees and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Tub of Vic. There you go.
Yeah.
So all tiger bone. Yeah. It's all all good stuff. But just to big up when we got to Switzerland. You were saying like you Thompson had done my neck, and then there was a little gap because he stayed with me, as I say, for way over a month. And in between, we won't go into this now, but you and I went off and did a sneaky beaky thing in Northern Ireland.
Oh yeah.
And then when we came back, it was quite funny because I don't know if I ever told you this, but we weren't allowed to say where we were going because it, a little bit QT. But when I told him, and I said, I can tell you where I've been now, you know, Harry's game had been on the television. And you went, the colour drained, and he went, you went out the room and he went, come here you, give me a bollocking. But those, I paid for Switzerland, so.
That was good.
Well, when we got to Switzerland, there were a few of the guys there who, as mentioned earlier, were into chiropractic. Yeah. And a lot of the students were staying in like the nuclear bunker type accommodation and things like this. And we were staying in a dojo, massive dojo area above where the instructors were sort of there. And I noticed that part of the dojo was had a little therapy place to it, you know, a bench and things like that. Got into conversations, and it turned out like there were guys having conversations about everything from remedial massage, mobilizations, chiropractic, and things like this. And I just sat in on them, and I got really interested. And when I came back, one of the lads on the fire station was doing a sports massage course, and he left his notes out. Right, and when I went to him, what's that? He thought I was going to take the piss out of him. Right, so he went, oh, nothing. He just went, no, I'm interested. That was the first place I started to train. Yeah. Yeah, I just walked into the station, this guy had left his stuff out, and that was my toe in the door. As I got through one course, I thought, I think I'll carry on. Yeah. And I carried on for 7 years until I was pretty qualified. Yeah. So, that's again, unusual circumstances. How I got into it, you know.
And you've treated some pretty significant people in the martial arts world. I remember you telling me about treating Gary, and then the challenge of treating someone that size.
Gary, well, for those that don't know, Gary was a 25 stone Maori, and he was such a funny guy, wasn't he? Like, you know, we knew him just
the digger,
the dirty digger, yeah. So he would come up. It was always he'd come up.
He was a hypochondriac as well, by the way. He was always on death's door.
But he couldn't keep still, you know. I don't know if you know this. He'd come into the practice room and we'd be talking, Gary, and things like this. Yeah. And he's the guy responsible for me wearing flip-flops all the time, you know. That's all he had. He said, I've only got 2 pairs of shoes, Dicker. He said, one's my flip-flops, and I get them sold and healed. He gets his flip-flops sold because they were like boats, you know. Yeah. And he managed to get a hold of a pair of army boots, some massive outsized thing for when he was on his motorbike, you know, and things like old motorbikes.
Viking army.
Yeah. But I actually had to adapt some of the techniques to, for example, free off his neck, because he had a head like a beach ball. You know, he was just a big unit. He had an unbelievable skeleton.
Yeah.
I mean, the density of his skeleton was just remarkable. And he sort of, he put that completely down to like the Maori background, and you might have to cut this, because I said, why do you get a skeleton like that? And he went, thousands of years of my people eating yours. But he was unbelievable. I used to wear a sweatband made of like linen, and I'd carry a knife to cut it and things like that when I had long hair, you know. Couldn't find a knife one time. Gary just went, it was when Higawanasense was first coming into this country. He went, give us a here, digger. And he just ripped through this linen that was, it was just, it was like, how have you done
I remember him
that?
teaching his defence against a headlock. If you had him in a headlock, he'd just bite you through like a leather jacket.
You just got to hope he didn't like the taste with Gary, because that's what he told me one time. He said this guy who was giving him a load of grief pulled a knife on him. So Gary said, so I pulled my knife out. He said, and he looked worried. He said, but when I pulled my fork out,
I remember, I was going to say, I remember that, yeah.
It was just, it was the case. So,
trying to manipulate him must have been...
Well, it was, bear in mind that I'm 6 foot and 15 stone, you know, I was probably training weight then 13 and a half stone. There's old pictures of us together, and I look like a little boy, you know, compared to,
And then you also treated Higawanasense.
Yeah, Higawanasense was, he's a bit special on there, just on every marker, you know, he's a special, he's like a role model, he's so polite. Remember when you were in Japan, he would never slag anyone off, would he?
No,
he'd always
He always found something positive to say about someone.
Yeah,
had a nice wife or something. You know?
Yeah, that's right, that was at the Worlds. You remember you telling me that story, just a hell of a guy. And I've been so lucky to have met people like him. And I remember one time it was a kind of hamstring, back of knee problem. And I had him on the bench, obviously, if he comes into this country. He had certain places he used to sort of stop off at, and my place was one of them. We'd have a catch up and do a bit of treatment if he needed it. And it wasn't long before that. It was when I was treating Mark Savage, who just won the British powerlifting champion. And he just come second in the Worlds to
Kazma,
in Espoo in Finland. And before he went, Mark had injured himself. Actually, I just remembered how he injured himself. We were all training in Vic's gym in Liverpool.
Naughty Ash.
Brilliant gym.
Yeah.
And the British coach hadn't turned up. So Vic said, right, let's take you through your routine. When he finished going through his training routine, British coach turned up late, and he said, we've done it. And he said, well, do it again, I need to see it. Right. After that, Mark was knackered. So we got him on the bench. We were only a week or two out from the Worlds, this in Finland. I beasted him. I really beasted him. And he got to the Worlds, and he came second, and he told me a story. Kazma apparently, he had a bit of a sore back, so he flew his chiropractor out. So I said to Mark, you only had to ask. You know, but we were lucky. The only one who ever sponsored Mark was me, and the butchers from Kirby. That was the difference between...
Mark Savage by name. In the gym, he was absolutely savage.
But he was a
lovely man.
He was one of them.
But it's so impressive and
so gentle. I thought so.
He was another role model, another one of those guys. The gym used to stop when he was doing his maximum squats and that. We'd all support him. Terrific. There's a couple of really prominent lifters in that gym.
in Vix. Well,
It was the centre for excellence, wasn't it?
it was, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was spot on.
It was Vicar Monday.
Well, again, if it turns out to be halfway towards a decent idea, then one of the things I think I've been looking at, and I've started to make a note because after years of being badgered to write something, a book and things like that, then one of the things that I've made notes of the mentors that I've been lucky enough, and we're touching on some of them, you know, at the moment just as we go along with like Higuana Sensei and like Gary Spires, Terry O, yourself, a few other people, and not all necessarily from martial arts, but it's like having to do this has made me look back, which is a thing I don't very often do, look backwards. I tend to be a little bit more, you know, what's next. But so it's been good. It's blown the dust off a little bit for me. So yeah. But when we answered the Switzerland thing, didn't we? Came back and then started that. So that's cool.
Great. Okay, a lot of stuff to cover in future interviews too, which will continue. And great.
Yeah, that was a pleasure.
Yeah, fantastic.
Happy days.